qalinkiyo buga baahida loo gabaxaye qalinkiyo buga baahida loo gabaxaye bulshayahay aqoontiyo ku dadaala waxbarashada 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 bulshayahay aqoontiyo ku dadaala.
So we're very excited to have you here tonight to welcome Abdi Latif and to witness the book reading of Guban. And thank you so much for driving through the snow. I know that it wasn't easy. I was a little anxious. I was like, I hope you will come. It's kind of crazy out there. But I'm glad that there's turnout. We kind of launched this initiative called Hal Abur very recently. It's actually a working name. We haven't decided on a name yet. But I wanted to kind of tell you what the mission of Hal Abur is. The actual meaning is to create, and the mission is to have a cultural organization committed to promoting Somali literature and arts in Minnesota, providing a space for its expression. We encourage our intentional about cultivating diverse forms of imagination in the community. With that said, this is one of the first gatherings. We've had actually a lot of events under a different name, Somali Cultural and Language Circle in the past, where we've done book readings in Somali, and we have another event coming up on Sunday for World Mother Tongue Day. I'll say a little bit more about that shortly. But this, to hold it bilingually and in English, to have events that are open to the broader community.
Normally when you are reading a book, whatever that book lives in you is, sometimes there is a memory in your past, or maybe it actually takes you to another world of which you do not know much about. In my case, that book immediately takes me to a time in Somalia when I traveled from my beloved city of Ergabo to the there. And the Sisu Gari Kasarna, that's actually another story. Now, a Colombian spectator called the book, said Guban burns away misconceptions of Somali culture in PhD candidate's new novel. And it goes on to say that the book should be read not just for its stunning imagery and language, but also what it says about the human condition in general. In literal translation, Guban in English is burn, of which Abdi Latif uses it as a metaphor for an entire nation and its people. Set against the backdrop of East Africa, the novel explores the clash of modernity, urban civilization, and traditional, more egalitarian life of pastoralists that still populate the region, documenting both brutality and national dictatorship and international pressures from the Cold War. Guban brings together the immediacy of journalism and reportage with imaginative expansiveness of the novel. Abdi Latif is a long-time resident of Harlem, New York. He loves and plays jazz, and heavily is influenced by the writers of African descent from all corners of the world. Abdi is currently a teaching fellow at Columbia University in the city of New York, and is a PhD candidate. Please let us welcome Abdi Latif. Here you go.
Thank you. I thank all of you for coming tonight. Especially proud to be here today. Thank Sarah for the Somali Public Radio for all the media work that they're doing in the back. I think I forgot to mention them. And all the people I've seen so far, and those I'm going to meet later on. And quite a few pillars of the communities are here, like Ma'alim Saeed, Sa'ad, my fellow writer here. And not to say that everyone is not, but you know, I think we have to acknowledge, if nothing else, the age factor. So I think I'm going to, he has made the introduction, I need not to go further than that. I'm going to read a few pages and then we'll open it up for very, very kind questions. This is the first chapter, it's called The Water Bearer. The journey to the well was long and scary when Tusmo was younger. She would start before the shadows cast and would usually reach the well when there was a significant shadow in the day. It was scary because the land was in endless darkness. Her camel, a 10-foot beast, would not avail her any form of protection from the many dangers lurking out there. The wild animals in search of succulent morsel before they returned to their dens. Tusmo at this tender age felt she was being thrown to the hyenas in the darkness, shrouded ominously before the break of dawn. Whenever she felt she could not possibly go through with, the voice of her mother in her head would sternly urge her on, resoundingly stating how it was her duty to the clan, family, and a further duty to her own homestead of the future. In the light of the day, brought on by the unrelenting sun, the land assumed an indistinguishable form. Every thorn looked like the other. Every anthill looked identical. There were thousands of well-trodden footpaths. Footpaths all around. The small footpaths in the sandy earth marked by spaces of grass in the ground resembled the translucent head of hair, of thinning hair. The trees were mainly thorn trees, all emaciated and small in stature from a sparse diet of nothing but very little rainfall. The trees had this in common with every living thing in this desolate abode of collective harshness. It was the most barren part of the world. Everything that grew here had to put up a fight to merely exist. Plants were as fierce as the rest of the environment. They abounded with thorns to ensure life. The lay of the land was unforgiving, cruel, as if still despondent from its volcanic eruptions of long ago. Sand lodged in places where seasonal rivers once flowed. Barren volcanic mountain ranges in the background presided over everything, stoically aloof to the daily proceedings as they unfolded. A flat enormity of semi-arid land was dashed here and there by thorn trees too short to hide or give shade to anything. Mingled with the thorny shrubbery, that translucent head of hair grass resembled hay growing out from the earth. What perhaps used to be a long, luscious grass when this was a savanna. The 10-foot camel followed obediently through a nosebleed. The animal, with all its clumsy glory, reigned supreme to the fierce pastoralists. This animal was the end and the beginning of all things. There was conflict. There was conflict as to which was, I skipped the entire thing. This animal was the end of the beginning. There was conflict as to which was more important. Water or the camel? Water or the camel? Disputes were always over water rights for the camels, goats, sheep, in that order, which invariably involved bloodshed. Only the camel sufficed as payment for disputes often heralding the end to hostilities, although there was those rare individuals who chose a life for a life instead. A color which permeated everything. It seeped into the clothes, fingernails, and the red being the color of the loose sand of this region. After the journey, there were other chores awaiting her return. She would tend to the needs of our filling his ablution water container full before the night prayer, bringing in milk and most of all the tea before he would retire for the night. By this time, Tusmo had corralled the livestock on tree branches as an impenetrable defense against would-be wildlife intruders. And that's it for the excerpt.
Somali culture is more of a oral and spoken word, but we're somewhat moving to the print, which is nice to see that, so we can capture it. My question to you would be, Guban not only as a geographic location, but as your analysis tying to the regime of Siad Barre, for example. Because I remember when I was in college, I was reading Edward Said, who was especially this book about Orientalism. Edward Said is a Palestinian, he was a Palestinian American. But talk about Orientalism in terms of not the Orient, but Arab, Islam, and all that. So maybe you can shed a light about how you tie Guban as a burning volcanic place with the regime. But the other thing also is that was too close to me, too home, was your characters. For example, Tusmo, my little niece, her name is Tusmo. Oksede, who was a businessman, was also my late uncle. So it was like, this is close to home. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the question in terms of Orientalism and Edward Said and the famous, what they now call post-colonial doyen of he's changed entirely English departments or whatever department that is. There are of course those who are still unsure whether the book came out or not. So I think the relationship is in the book itself in terms of particularly culture and imperialism, and there's Fanon in terms of the narrative of the native and modernity in terms of the metropole or the city becoming, the relationship to modernity and progress. And there's always that juxtaposition is always available. What we call, well, by the way, I mean, this person doesn't know anything because he has no wellspring of knowledge from the West. And so in that sense, there is relationship in terms of recreating a narrative that is responds to corporate media in their sense of how they create that same citizen subject and actually dehumanize the person by the nomenclature of pirate, warlords, and terrorists. So this is a response in the Saidian sense to that. In other words, creating and moving it from the subject to a response, in other words, objects, whatever. That's the first part. But Guban occurred to me and would not leave me while I was writing. And it had to be the title, because it's really counterintuitive that you're writing a book in English and you want to you put in a title that no one understands. But be it as it may, it returned and stayed with me until it was over and became the most the most appropriate of titles, because it exemplified metaphorically how that state of affair of being burnt transcends, but the naming is done by the nomad, because he names the volcanic area. But at the same time, it juxtaposes that modernity. And at the same time, it shows you what happened to Tusmo, in the sense that she is perhaps the least powerful in the state, the weakest link. And so the weakest link is burnt in a collectivity by this experiment called the nation state, whether it is the early 1961 or whether it is the 91 one. I mean, till the end of it. It's a continuation anyways, it has never stopped. But the point was to deliver that sense. In other words, that it's almost like in a sense of license use, maybe a dream deferred.
In this book, Guban, were there any characters as you were writing them that kind of went in a different direction or took a life of their own?
Most of them. Most of them. I went about writing a plot, and it took me 5 or 6 months to do that. And then when the engagement with the paper came about, that plot actually became only sort of like a restriction. In other words, I knew not to venture further there or here. But most of the characters and things, some of them are created by, for example, Tusmo had to run out of the city. And you can't run out of the city without a vehicle. So not only do you need a vehicle, but you also need a driver. So yeah, a character is born.
Your writing style, like the way you build characters. And I was going to say, if you could take this nomad into a modern time, what type of Somali would it be?
I think.
And is the nomad dead? That's my second question.
Is the nomad dead?
I just heard the president recently say that we need 1 million Somalis who live abroad. So I picture them as a nomad. You know, they come with that ancestral value. So if they go back, will they go back with the Western mentality, or?
I think my response to the president, with all due respect, you're supposed to be the president, not the, what is it called, the director of unemployment. All right. And so that's what I would say to the president.
Right.
Because you know there are people who have been living there for a very long time.
And I was just trying to quote this.
Yeah, I understand, but I just, you know, you struck you draw blood in some things. Right? You know, there's some things about, you know, there's the idea of, you know, the diaspora and its relationship to Western and all this. And so having drunk some water here, now all of a sudden you are able to lean over there. You know, I don't know. This is something that might be a big problem for. And we have examples like Nigeria and things like that, where people, you know, moved in and taken everything away. So I think there should be a caution there. That's one part. Of course, you know, I think generally the agrarian, the farmer, all these things are things that are being usurped, if you will, by the superpowers trying to reconfigure people in their own likeness. And so, you know, the way I see it is that we're going to have a world that looks more alike in terms of, you know, drinking their Starbucks and having their iPods. So, you know, there's a fear for everyone, not just the nomads. You know, and there's a fear that Minnesota will no longer be Minnesota, but actually just part of a landscape of anywhere America, which is now happening. When you go to Georgia and go to Atlanta and go to New York, you encounter the same type of people, kind of. There's no distinct thing that's being wiped away. So that's the effect of modernity. So yes, I mean, we're going to change in many ways, but I think there's a huge population of people within Africa who still are Pastorials and Somalian. I have a big part of my family who still, you know, don't think money is that important. You know, camels are more important.
Did you have the idea itself, and the idea would not let go of you, or you just started to get into writing and then somehow or another it became a book?
No, it wasn't any of that. Actually, mine was a forced entry into the whole business. I guess I got tired of people organizing who I am. You know, and that's what happened. So what I said was, you know what, you know, if corporate media is not going to do it, if the academic circles are not going to do it, and someone has to step up to the plate and create a different narrative that is more realistic about people who are Somali, rather than having everyone go to these caricatures where you're saying whenever you see on TV it's either a warlord, you don't know whether to go into Meiji Japan, you know, and think about that medieval time, or go into the Caribbean and think about a pirate in the 21st century. Or, you know, an entire nation which has been depicted as a, what is it called, a hospitality hotel for terrorists. So this is the problem. So I think that's what stems in the book. I think it's a work of political response and also responsibility for those of us who are in the diaspora and who can either be part of the problem or can, you know, go against the grain. After years of listening to Christiana Amanpour, who has this, what is it called, almost rabid, in search of a terrorist wherever she can find, you know, it's just, that's how she makes a living. And so, somebody has to do something because it's madness. You know, because these words are actually words that kill. You know, and it gives the state an open check, so to speak, to do what they will, in the name of war on terror.
Thank you for coming.
Please, yeah, thank you. And please, I would like everyone to say their names.
I will.
I have a thing with that.
My name is Saida Shai, or Saida Shai, and I'm honored to be here. And in Somali, they say Saida Shai. So that's why you know me. So there's three different ways to pronounce my name. Anyways, I have two questions. One question is, you kind of touched, sort of, in terms of what inspired you to write this book. Just kind of like go into that and kind of explain that. That's one question. The second question is, as you know, Minnesota is the second largest, I would say, or the first largest city for the Somali people. We call here Little Mogadishu. And I think it's going to be the big Mogadishu soon, because I think a lot of people are here. And so my question to you is, what would you suggest someone like in my shoes, who have been here and trying to actually grasp some stories like that, trying to find books, to read something about our country, to read stories and see, kind of like figure out and go back to our roots and get that feely, sugary, salty stuff. What would you suggest for us? I know there's a lot of people who are going to school, graduating. What would you suggest if someone maybe is trying to write a book or something like that? Or what would you say? Write articles, write books.
I think.
I want to hear that from someone who's.
I think the underlying question here is that, you know, if you do not speak for yourself, others will, and that's pretty much it. So if you're we live in a society that is media-driven, whatever, and we live in a world post 9/11, which is really security different. It's a knee-jerk kind of security thing, and it has affected every aspect, whether it's, you know, all that stuff that's going on with civil liberties and the encroachment of that citizenship within this country to other things. So the thing is that a certain sense of awareness is demanded, and that awareness has to, you know, permeate through collectives, organization, and things like that. But, you know, responding to your time and place is one part of it. And this book is of course a response to really the mainstream narrative that I would say.
Who is the woman in the cover of the book?
That's, you know, always the backstories are much better than the real one.
Yeah.
The backstory to this is that I was invited to Bard College, and at that time the book was not out. And so I worried and said, you know, Bard is a very famous place for writers. You know, they have invited me, so I need to figure out a web presence before they do. You know, that with the, you know, because the invite had already gone out, I was supposed to speak at the sort of thing. And this was in the fall of 2011. And so I called up my friend, an Ethiopian friend from the city. He's a graphic designer or whatever, and he does this for a huge company. I think it's the Open Society somewhere in Africa. And so I called him, and, you know, desperate, saying, hey, you know, I really need a cover. And I have the book, it's written all that, but it's not out yet. Can you help me out? And that was around 8 p.m. By 11:30, he had sent me this. with the cover, everything. You know, exactly this. So I put it up, I opened up a Facebook page, I did this, and all of a sudden, here I am, I have social media presence, you know, overnight. So I never asked who this woman is. And so the woman ended up...
I hope he gave... Yes,
it ended up... The story continued. The story doesn't stop there.
okay.
So I use the cover here, which is what she becomes on Facebook. Nobody's asking about the book anymore. People are asking, who is this lady? And one thing that I forgot to mention is that when he sent me the file, he said, you cannot use this because I don't have the copyright for it. You can't use it, you don't have it, please just go ahead, this is this. And he was also saying, oh yeah, sure, you know, he's a friend of mine. Oh sure, yeah, your book, yeah, whatever. You know, he wasn't, you know, put it mildly, he wasn't a believer. So the book stayed on Facebook for several months. It was on the website for Bard College for many more months, and then it went on the Columbia website, and then here and there, and then all of a sudden it became, I could not detach the book from this cover. So I said, in the meantime, he's working in Ethiopia, sometimes in New York, sometimes in Uganda. I keep saying, can you please give me the copyright? Can you find the person you got this from? He said, look, I just got it from the web. I don't know whose it is. and so I was stuck. Eventually what happened is that to bring this and cut this down to a point is that I was desperate for it because the book could not go out without the cover, and he had no copyright. So we meet in a cafe. He's been in Ethiopia maybe 6 months or so. This is the spring, the book is about to come out. We're meeting around, I think, December or something like that. He says, look, before the meeting, he says, look, I have a cover for you. And I didn't listen to what he was saying because I wanted something. He said, and I said, I'll meet you tomorrow, how much do you want? So I ran over there, and then he gave me this photograph. And my heart sank because it wasn't the photograph I wanted. He said, look, I don't have a photograph, I don't have this copy. I mean this, but I do have this, you can change it. I said, no, that's just not gonna work. And so I went on the internet and I did a search of images and this and that. I finally found out this little piece of metal was unique. And then I found out that it was a group of people, ethnic group, in between the border of Somalia and Kenya, called the Garba. And this was a mark of marriage. It turns out that with the image that I found in the bank, in the archive, it belongs to a famous French photographer. French, yeah, Eric Lafargue, who goes to the Horn of Africa and does all these things. And so I wrote him a Facebook. I found him on Wikipedia, and finally he had a Facebook account. So I wrote him a message and said, look, my friend, your picture has intruded on my book. He intruded on my book. I don't know what to do. You know, and of course I said, you know, I like your images. One of the reasons why this image was chosen is that it is not one of those images where you have somebody either, you know, pulling a child with a huge belly, you know, from famine, or some kid with an AK, you know, or something like that. This is a picture of a person who is questioning you, but has none of those typically typical images of the Horn of Africa. So that was in part of it. And so eventually I wrote him. It took 2 or 3 days. He responded and he says, "Are you a big company?" I said, "Certainly not." He said, "Then you can have it for free."
Wow.
And that was it. And he's a famous guy. He actually, if you go, Eric Lafargue is on National Geographic and other places that he does work. So that's the story of the cover. Okay, I have a cousin who wrote to me and said, if you are going to put a woman who looks just like our Eldo, our aunt, why don't you just ask me for a picture?
You were worried about the copyright stuff here. Like,
Yeah.
I would give.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
More questions, please. Yes, so Majestic. How are you? Salam.
I had a question about the dialogue. Where you have characters talking to each other, whether it's Tusma or somebody else. You have the introduction in Somali, and then the responses in English. But your audience is obviously everybody, so I was wondering why there wasn't a translation. Like you would say, Iskwaran, and then the response would be, "Oh, I'm well, how are you?" and then it would continue. So I thought maybe like for a person that doesn't speak Somali.
Well, I'm actually challenging the person who doesn't speak Somali to actually look at the Somali word and think about it, and then the next line is, you know, "I'm doing good," so of course the person will say, "Oh, it must be a greeting." Yes. There's a fascinating guy who is actually a Somali kid, but he's what you call a Krish boy. And he's about 11, 12. He works, but he's young. He deals with the child, but it's a common character in the landscape of Somalia. We have this young person, very young, at 10 or 11 or even younger or older, working as a helper in a truck, things like that. So there's that, and then there's two girls that are the daughters of Tusmo.
I just want to know who influenced you in terms of your earlier reading. For example, the African literary, such as Francis Fouan, who was a Martinique, French Martinique, who also moved to France, but then the colonial days moved to Algeria, who was against the French resistance. So in your earlier reading, who was one of your,
This particular book, when I finished it, for example, I think there's a dedication to C.L.R. James, who was a Trinidadian scholar, literary scholar, philosopher, and many things. He was just an outrageously prolific person in many forms. When I finished this book, I realized it because I was reading him a lot that year. I realized that there was a lot of things that his approach and perspective, particularly the world perspective, which is atomized. In other words, there's a Tusmo, but at the same time, Tusmo revolves around a much bigger world, meaning superpower machinations. So there's that, and of course there's the regular African Writers series, which are available to everybody. Either secondhand or a relative put it out or something like that. And my influences have been that, and also a lot of African American and African Caribbean. I think there's so many. I think everybody says Toni Morrison.
Okay.
Yeah, Toni Morrison. I think I read a lot of Alice Walker in those days. I didn't particularly like her characters, but I don't think there's anything she's put out I haven't read. Yeah. I think she could have done a better job, I think, the characters. But then again, she says, this is what she did. There's that, and there's Zora. You know, Zora Hurston. It is also from the African canon, so many women. The African Writers series as a whole. Cheetah, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, quite a few. Somali, I don't know.
That's what I was thinking about.
Somali, I think there's a woman, her name is Latif. Yeah, and then there's, I was reminded last night, I think there's a Safi Jama, I think, who writes, I think, in UAE. Yeah?
She's in United Arab.
Yeah, I think she writes novels too.
She wrote 2 novels.
There's
Two
a
now.
lot that if you do like a Wikipedia search, there's a lot of Somali women.
Yeah, so there's quite a few. She's not only looking for Somali, but they're, you know, influential. And many writers. There's, you know, Bouvier and other people too.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Plus, that's my listing, but I have, you know, a lot of things going on at the same time, so I might be reading this or might be reading that. But, yes?
Why did you decide to come to Minnesota? Was it part of the tour, or were you invited, or how does it all work?
You must have come late.
Better late than never.
Yeah, what happened is I was invited here by a group. I did a artistic group called Halabur, which means, you know, generally composers and people who create. And they brought me here. So that's why I'm in Minnesota, and I think if I had the choice, I would have come in the summer. But I really am thankful. I mean, they spread I think the biggest red carpet for me I have seen so far. I've been in many places. Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. My question is, why Guban? It makes me think of pain, cries, suffering.
Well, I think it's a very difficult question to answer because, you know, some other person would read the same thing and think about the pasture and the nomads and that area. So it has that duality. But the title, the book is not in any way. It has very what is it called? All kinds of stuff, and it's not your typical you know, child soldier story. It's not. It does not go into, you know, like the horrific violence that they usually portrayed, or, you know, whatever. And it doesn't go into famine. The usual thing that, you know, Go ahead.
So Guban, kind of a feminine character. What made you choose?
Guban?
I know I'm still stuck on the title. Well, my first question was, why did you choose it? Because kind of takes pain, band. But again, Guban,
well, I think,
is kind of like a feminine character. So is there a reason why you relate to?
I don't know where you get Guban from. I mean, where you get it from, it being, you know, meaning it being feminine.
It is feminine. Well, look, I think
It's in this sense, we have somebody who just compiled the dictionary, it's masculine. So I don't even have to look at Google. No, I think really you have to look at it as not as anything other than as a region and also a state of being, which is meaning not being but an action of birth, right? So that is neither a male or female, but it's actually an act kind of thing. And a description of that act post the burning. So this is volcanic. You know, it's a volcanic mountain place. And they say it looks a certain way because it's been burnt by nature.
Why do you choose to become a writer than anything else?
I think the toughest questions are coming from these young people. The other ones I'm able to deal with, right? Yes, the toughest ones.
Yes.
Why did I choose to be a writer? I think I thought it was important for me. Not the idea of being a writer, but actually just putting this information out, because I understood that people read and words influence the way people think. And so I wanted to alter or change the idea of what Somalis are. So I needed to write. and make that change possible. So it was an avenue for me to change the way people talk, people understand who I am. And that's what compelled me to be a writer. You know, so the act of writing itself came before the title of writing. Okay, I hope that answers it. Way in the back there with the glasses. Yeah. You.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I didn't have a question.
Oh, I'm
I have a compliment. Thank you. And it was lovely. It was a gift to get to be taken to a place, and a memory place that isn't mine, but is human. And as you talk about exploring the human experience through the guise, through the particular filter of your Somali cultural experience, I also just want to thank you. The power of a voice, the energy in the room completely changed as soon as you started reading, and we all went to some place. So I just want to say thank you for that, and thanks to Abdi for recognizing the power of artists and the artistic voice to really change things.
Thank you so much. Yes, go ahead. Your name, please.
My name is Abdi. I don't know if I read this somewhere. Is there a series to this book? Is there no comment?
Yes, there's, again, we go into another backstory. So this is written around I'm dating myself. 2007. 2007, this was written approximately during the invasion of Somalia by Ethiopia, the proxy of the war on terror. That's when it started. And then I was supposed to write about 91 to 2000, etc., which was at that time. It dawned on me that no one would understand that, including myself, because the situation was fluid. It was changing and all that. And also that I'm a man of history. I realized that, you need context for everything. And so this came out because I needed to write about the nation state before I was able to write about a collapsed nation, a so-called collapsed nation. So this is what happened. This is the context for the book that I wanted to write. And then it occurred to me that you cannot write the nation state. That means Somalis or Somali, like in this book. There is no Somali, there's Somali here. Okay, no one has actually challenged me on that one, which is interesting. But it's actually just Somali in it. And so the Somali itself spans, thousands of years, so you have to figure out, okay, you've only written about a snapshot, which is 1960 to 91. You need to go back and find out before colonialism, nation states, and then collapse. So that first book I wanted to write in response to the media turned out to be 4 books. So yes, there is, from now until the medieval times, one.
But like you said, it's Somal is a reference that goes back, like you said, thousands of years of culture. But the time period that you're writing is the 70s, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's 60s, 70s, up to 91.
Right, like the Seattle era. Wouldn't we considered Somali at that point and not Somal? Because I see that as like colonial times movement. Because I think in a couple of chapters you did Somal, and then a couple of lines down there was like Somali, like the Somali people.
Yeah, but that's a narrative or whatever. So when they're discussing the nation state, so that would be addressed as what it was. But the reason why I put that in there is that we understand that Somal or Somal is sort of like a reminder that we all speak one language. And that's its real essence. It precedes the nation state. Yeah. So that's what it really is. It's not a bone of contention. It's something that we all share. And that's what it is. Right? That's what the underlying reason for it. It's sort of like a reminder. Okay, so I think we'll thank Minneapolis and agency for